Good evening, afternoon, and evening, respected to the places from where you've joined. It is with great pride and deep admiration that I welcome you all to what promises to be remarkable and intellectually enriching session. Today, we have the immense honor being in the presence of one of the most distinguished art historians of our time, Professor Dr. Ebba Koch, whose decades-long engagement with the visual, architectural, and cultural history of the Mughal world has left an indelible mark on global scholarship. So Koch is an acclaimed professor at the University of Art History at the University of Institute of Art History at the University of Vienna. Her stature not only reflects her academic position, but also the prestige she commands as a scholar of transcultural art history. Born in Austria and educated in the classical languages of Latin and Greek, her academic foundation is steeped in deep traditions of humanistic learning. She went on to earn her PhD in History of Art and Classical Archaeology from the University of Vienna in 1986, with a dissertation on Shah Jahan's throne in the hall of public audience at the Red Fort, commonly known as Diwan-e-Am, in Delhi. A study that would set the tone for a lifelong inquiry into the aesthetics and political dimensions of Mughal architecture. Her habilitation, completed in 1992, further solidified her position as a leading voice in the field, focusing on the historical development of Mughal architecture from 1526 to 1850. The Koch's career is distinguished by an unrivaled body of work that has redefined how we view the Mughal Empire's visual culture. Her scholarship is rooted in the firm groundwork of fieldwork, architectural surveys, documentation, and physical measurement of some of the continent's most iconic structures. But her intellectual range spans far beyond architecture. Her research explores imperial ideology, translational artistic changes, and the symbolic language of kingship, the relationship between architecture and ceremony, and the construction of sacred and political space. Her published corpus is as expansive as it is influential. Among her landmark works are the Mughal architecture, an outline of its history and development, a foundational text of the field, and the complete Taj Mahal and the riverfront gardens of Agra. This not only provided a definitive visual and analytical account of India's most iconic monument, but also introduced a new paradigm for studying urban design and riverfront planning in early modern South Asia. Her book Mughal Art and Imperial Ideology brought together critical essays that explored allegory, symbolism, and narrative in Mughal painting and court culture. More recently, her monograph, The Planetary King Humayun Padshah, Inventor and Visionary on the Mughal Throne, offers a path-breaking re-evaluation of the artistic and cosmological imagination of Humayun, challenging previous notions of his role as a translational or overlooked figure. Professor Koch's research has received the support of major institutions including Austrian Science Fund and the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, with whom she has had a long and fruitful collaboration. She has also worked with the Archaeological Survey of India as the Tagore National Fellow for Cultural Research in 2019, conducting extensive research on the Red Fort of Agra. Her expertise has been sought for major heritage initiatives, including her advisory roles in Taj Mahal conservation, collaboration with the restoration of Bagh-e-Babar in Kabul, and most significantly, the Humayun's from World Heritage Site Museum in Delhi. She opened in 2014 with her as principal advisor, a milestone project a milestone project in museology and heritage interpretation in India. Her teaching and research appointments have taken her across the globe. She has been visiting professor at Harvard University, the University of Oxford, New York University, Delhi University, the American University in Cairo, and Boğaziçi University in Istanbul, among others. In these roles, she has trained generations of students, building cross-cultural academic linkages and mentoring the next wave of scholars in Islamic and South Asian art history. In recognition of her outstanding contributions, Koch was awarded the class Austria's highest national honor for achievement in science and arts, a distinction reserved for those who have shaped not only their disciplines but also the broader public understanding of cultural and history. Beyond the academy, she has worked tirelessly to bring scholarship into the public domain through curated exhibitions, media interviews, documentaries, and digital platforms. Her appearances in documentaries was National Geographic, Arte, and Doordarshan, as well as a role in shaping the Museum of Islamic Art in Canada, reflect a commitment to accessible scholarship and global dialogue. What makes Professor Koch's work truly remarkable is her ability to situate the Mughal world within larger global currents, be it the artistic dialogues with Renaissance Italy, architectural affinities with Central Asia and Iran, or the political language of empire that resonates across time and space. Her scholarship opens windows not just into monuments and manuscripts, but into how empires imagined themselves and communicated power through form, image, and ritual. Friends, to her, speak is to be taken on a journey to the corridors of Mughal architecture, the allegorical richness of imperial albums. Please join me in welcoming the stage of scholar of profound depth, vision, and humanity, Professor Dr. Ebba Koch. Ma'am, the floor is over open for you, and you may proceed. Thank you very much, President.
So thank you very much, Aditya Tripathi, for this very comprehensive introduction. Yeah, I hope through my talk I will come up to your expectations after you got this very extensive sort of history almost of my life. And as I said previously, it's a great pleasure to meet you here. I mean, I'm speaking here from the south of Austria, from Carinthia, and where we went for the summer, my husband and me. So it's a great pleasure for me to speak to you from here. And I was especially impressed that the students of Delhi University de developing this interest, yeah, not only for history, but also for our best witnesses of history, namely the monuments. Because words can lie, but the buildings cannot. One only has to find a way to understand what they try to convey to us. So today, as we have decided, I'm going to talk about the new museum of Humayun at Delhi. And it's a very convenient date because it's now almost a year that the museum was inaugurated last year in Delhi. I was there for the inauguration organized by the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, and it was a very impressive event to see all what we had discussed in our meetings now come to life, if you so wish, in this great building. Yeah, I think you know probably that of all the great Mughals, Humayun, the son of Babur and the second Mughal emperor, is perhaps the least understood and least appreciated of all the first six Mughals, and he is mainly remembered as a political and military failure, having lost to his rival Afghan Sher Shah, what Babur had conquered in India. And so Humayun is mainly known through his magnificent mausoleum at Delhi, raised by his son Akbar. So now this PowerPoint is not moving forward. It sort of got stuck. Wait, stop share. Can you see this? Can you see the
Yes, ma'am.
second? Yeah, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so, wait, yeah, right. So here it is. So that's an overview over the museum and tells you in a nutshell what it's shown there. And in the creation, in the years between 2014 and 2024, the Aga Khan Trust for Culture has built this museum, and I was invited by its director Ratish Nanda to assist with developing a program for the museum, for the permanent exhibition. Now we thought that on one hand, the museum should be a kind of gateway. Yeah, here can you see the whole team, which also a group of young, very capable scholars was part of it, and I was it was a great experience to work with them throughout these 10 years on this project. Now, Ratish is here, that's the director. Anyway, we can go to this file. Yeah. It shows you the whole site, this whole World Heritage Site, Sundarnagar, Nizamuddin Basti, and the tomb garden of Humayun, which was created by the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, this landscape park, and it contains over 60 Mughal monuments which they restored. So we have, I hope you can see my arrow, we have here Humayun's tomb, and here the site of the, here's the site of the museum, which is underground. Yeah, this is how it looks from above. So, on the one hand, the museum should explain the architecture of the mausoleum to the visitors and the whole area. But for me, it was also important that the focus should be on the ruler for whom the mausoleum was created, namely Humayun, to shed light on his travels, campaigns, and extraordinary social and intellectual life. To accompany the exhibition, I wrote a book with Aditya has mentioned, The Planetary King. And so here we have the title once more. And in this book, I attempt to draw a picture of Humayun's life and works, his deep involvement with the knowledge systems of his time, with the sciences of mathematics, astronomy, astrology, and also occultism, and with literature, poetry, painting, and architecture. An exciting challenge was a reconstruction of Humayun's extraordinary inventions, namely the planetary organization of his court, his extravagant buildings, and his extravagant, also can man say, court setting. And in the end, it emerged that it was Humayun who laid the foundation of the Mughal ruling ideology, the Mughal myth, which he impacted his successors. Now, the last part of the book is then devoted to the tomb of Humayun, to the mausoleum itself, which I see as a realization of his vision and his dreams. And yeah, so I mentioned already I was glad to work with the Aga Khan Trust for Culture on this project. And now in my talk, I shall first take you through Humayun's life and illustrate particular stations of his life with objects from the museum, and then in the end give you an overall overview of the whole, what is shown in the building. Here we have the inauguration, yeah, which was carried out by the Minister of Culture in the presence of the son of the Aga Khan. Here another view of the inauguration. Here we have the son of the Aga Khan, here's the minister. And this is what you would have seen, you know, during these 10 years when the tomb was, when the museum was being constructed between 2014 and 2024. Yeah, that's a view on the construction site in 2016. Yeah, another view a year later. Yes, it's me visiting the site in 2017. So you can also see the great height of this underground structure. And this was 1 year before the opening in 2023, which really shows there was still a lot of work to do before the inauguration could take place. In the background, we have models, elements of the tomb, of the roof, which are generally not accessible to visitors. Yeah, and that's a view on the completed galleries in 2024. So now that's a view of Humayun in one of our palaces at Vienna, which I show you as a background what I'm going to say about his life. He was young when he acceded to the Mughal throne, but he was driven by a quest for fame and perceived himself through the eyes of an imagined posterity. But it was not historiography that would fashion his image, but the products of his intellect, imagination, and talent that should give him a place in history. But the evidence show that the Pasha was too optimistic in his expectations because his historian Chandamir's description of his work in the Canon Humayuni failed to keep Humayun alive in the memory and the admiration of future generations. So, for reconstructing the context and the rich history of Humayun, we are better served when we look at retrospective sources written during the reign of his son and successor Akbar. And they allow us to place Humayun in his times to understand the challenges he had to face in the transition between his Timurid homelands, Afghanistan, Iran, and India, when he had to negotiate his position with his brothers, his amirs, and beygs who constantly wavered in their loyalty. Now, these were not comfortable years, but he prevailed and was able to regain the Mughal throne. So Humayun was the most widely traveled Mughal emperor. He was born in Kabul on 6th March 1508, which Babur had been using for his campaigns. And he was also his father's favorite and his trusted fellow campaigner against the Lodi sultans, from whom they took Delhi in 1526. So you have here, anyway, his way down here to Delhi. So he acceded the Mughal throne at Agra after Babur's death in December 1530, and then campaigned against Sultan Bahadur of Gujarat. And this brought him to Ahmedabad, where he stayed, as we know, at Sarkaj, where he could see the beautiful palaces of Mahmud Begada. Then he set off to fence off growing Afghan power, but he succumbed to Sher Shah Sur at Chausa in 1539 at the battle he led to him, and also at Kannauj. And here at Chausa, Humayun nearly drowned into the Ganges, which you can see on the left painting, which was then later in Akbar's period, and for the history to illustrate the history of Akbar, the Akbarnama, and then to recompense the water carrier, this lowly slave, who had saved him, who was named Nizam. He put him for 1 day on the throne. So now this act sheds significant light on Humayun's personality because in this moment of danger and turbulence, he took time out, so to say, to reverse all social orders. Now, it was not a recurring temporary reversal, which happens every year, of an order embedded in a social system, as during the carnival, about which Michael Bakhtin, the Russian philosopher and scholar who worked on literary theory, ethics, and the philosophy of language, so not from this concept of the carnival, of a ritually yearly recurring reversal of order, but it was it was a unique act on the part of Humayun. So he set a comparable act by staging a parody of himself in a travestied enthronement scene. And in his time and social conditions, and especially in a moment of political crisis, such a transgression was extremely shocking. This is also clear from what his half-brother Mirza Kamran said, who often criticized this, and also his half-sister Gulbadan sort of felt it was an unnecessary action on the part of her royal brother. So after this, Humayun had to take flight. Yeah, here we have, right. I said I would show objects in the museum. So that's the whole installation, which is devoted to Nizam, and also with copies of the paintings. And we see also an original sort of bag, in which a water carrier used to carry water, but which he inflated to save Humayun. So Humayun had to take flight and went to Lahore, and from Lahore south to Sindh. So I'm trying to move this arrow south to Sindh, yeah. So here, where his son Akbar was born. His son Akbar was born in 1542. These were the territories of a Timurid relative, namely Shah Hussein Argu, but who tried to get Humayun out of his territories. And in 1544, Humayun saw his prospects in India lost and went to Herat and sent to Iran to ask Shah Tahmasp for assistance. In Herat, he would have most likely stayed in this pavilion called Namakdan at Gasurga, and it could have inspired later his polygonal pavilion, the Shamandal, in the Fort Purana Kila. Now, in Iran, he met Shah Tahmasp to ask him for assistance, but the Shah behaved in a very ambivalent manner. On the one hand, he welcomed him friendly, but on the other hand, he tried to convert him to the Shia, wanted Humayun to wear his headgear, the Kisil Bash turban, which you see on the right side, the Shah wearing it, but Humayun insisted to wear his own turban, which he had invented and which he called the Taj-e-Isad, namely the crown of honor, and he argued it would be the equivalent to what the Shah wanted him to wear. Here we have the installation of a reproduction, how it could have looked like in the museum. And on the right side, the hand of one of the workers. It was all these Indian workers who did the wonderful recreation of the objects for the museum. So then Humayun was frustrated by the behavior of the Shah and sat in the great mausoleum of the Mongol Sultan Jaito at Sultaniya and bemoaned his fate, and from this grand domed structure he could have, gotten the inspiration for his own tomb at Delhi. So eventually, Humayun had to give in to the pressure of the Shah and accepted at least formally the Shia faith, and was then given 12,000 troops, and yeah, right. Here we have the whole section which is in the museum, which is devoted to the stay of Humayun in Iran. You see here the characteristic alams, a portrait of Humayun and the Shah meeting from a later period. Here's the astrological objects he bought at Tabriz, and also some vessels which he would have used. So now we have Humayuns with the troops mating. This goes too quickly. I have to be careful. Sorry. Moving forward to Kandahar, which he took from his brother Mirza Askari, and altogether he spent only 1 year in Iran, much shorter as generally assumed, because one thinks, even scholars think so, that he spent the whole time of his exile in Iran, but he moved to Kabul, where he was born, and here he took again power and had himself celebrated as a true, successor of Babur, and he also celebrated his reinstallment in this great painting in the British Museum. It's painted on cloth and about 1 meter by 1 meter its size. And later on, Jahangir added to it and made a dynastic group portrait of it. So we have here in this pavilion Humayun, which is the original figure, and here's the figures of Jahangir and Akbar, and also of the later Shah Jahan, which were added under Jahangir. In the museum, we have a reproduction of this. But establishing himself at Kabul did not end Humayun's troubles. He had to campaign during 10 years in Afghanistan against Mirza Kamran, whom he tried in vain to win over by his ever-forgiving, brotherly frame of mind, very unusual for his time. After numerous clashes and battles, Kamran was captured, and Humayun gave in to the pressure of his followers and had his brother blinded and sent to Mecca. The Bacha was unable to reconquer Hindustan, where he famously died soon afterwards from a fall of the stairs. I thought I have the stairs here. No, they're coming perhaps later, yeah. So anyway, in the Shyamandal in the Purana, he fell down the stairs. This was his newly built library and observatory, today called Shyamandal. Yeah. So historians had some difficulty coming to terms with Humayun's complex personality, with his pronounced individualism and his deviations from established notions of kingship. Now, no ruler in the early modern age, in East or West, had, as we will learn, organized his court according to planetary cosmology, designed court customs and rank-obliterating court games, conceived astrological tents and carpets, and intriguingly constructed and movable palaces, floating bazaars and gardens, both palaces and movable bridges. No ruler had reversed social order by putting an humble water carrier on his throne, and in real politics had shown so much clemency that it nearly led to self-destruction. Instead of seeking to understand Humayun's unorthodoxies, historians preferred to reduce his image by judging him according to more conventional criteria of kingship. But even here, they preferred to dwell on his failures, such as lost campaigns and his exiles, without appreciating his military and diplomatic successes, which, after all, enabled him to regain the Mughal throne. Now, the success of the first Mughal rulers can be explained by the highly talented and original personality, and Humayun fits well into these pictures. So he, on the one hand, he sought solitude and withdrawal from active life, or disappeared from the scene to give himself over to sexual indulgences and intoxicant substances. But on the other hand, he was an able army commander and hunter, and even held wrestling contests with his amirs and beyks. He loved his books, which he took along with him with special camels, one could say libraries, camels, Shutur Kitabkhane, and valued poetry and composed also himself a divan, a collection of poems. And all sources stress, I have mentioned it already, that he was a scholar with a particular interest in astronomy and astrology. So astrology had a somewhat controversial status, but astrological prognostication were established practices in the courts of Muslim rulers, and not only of Muslim rulers, because they were also considered indispensable for Indian kings. The 16th century Indian astronomer Varahamira holds a quote, "As the night without light, as the sky without the sun, so is a king without an astrologer. Like a blind man, he errs on the road." End of quote. And Humayun also prided himself on his clairvoyant faculties. So we learn from his servant Soha that he kept a cork which he fed with resins and used as alarm clock for his servants. And one day he said to himself, I quote, "If luck is with us, this bird will perch on my shoulder and crow." No sooner had this thought passed through his mind than the cock actually sat on his shoulder and crowed. End of quote. So Humayun was so overjoyed about this good omen, which he saw as a good omen for his impending Badakhshan campaign in June 1548, that he awarded the cock with a silver ring. And here in Akbar's times, this episode was considered important enough to illustrate, to use it for illustrating of the Akbarnama. His erudition and interests led Humayun to imagine a visionary draft of a utopian society favored by the heavens, not in a traditional religious sense, but by tapping into the positive energies of the astrological planets. He reached far back into a mystic past and reinvented tradition to bring into play new forms of social interaction for his newly assembled heterogeneous elite. So I mentioned earlier that he ordered his historian Khandamir to put his extraordinary inventions down. And for him, it was very important, as mentioned already, to have them recorded for posterity, so that he might be remembered through them forever. Now, I have here a sort of schedule which shows you what the most important elements of this planetary organizations is. Namely, we have on top here, so he organized his society in three groups: the Ehle Daulat, the people of power; then the Ehle Saadat, these were the learned and the religious people; and the Ehle Murad, these were the entertainers. And he held court service, administration with on particular ways of the week, which you see indicated here. So, what was important for him was to establish a system which would create a new hierarchy without any links to usages familiar to his relatives and followers. The new Humayuni dispensation would also help to diminish ethnic and religious causes for strife and disagreements. And he, with these groups, he set out to engage the cosmic powers for his court and adapted planetary knowledge for his own purposes to attract and draw down beneficial planetary influences on himself and his court. He used color. So you see the colors here are sort of indicated on this table, and yeah, what's really very fascinating is how he used color to draw down beneficial planetary influence also on his own person by matching the color of his dress to the color of the planet of the day. So it would be white, on Monday for Moon, red for Mars on Tuesday, then a sort of bluish for Mercury on Wednesday, beige or brownish for Jupiter on Thursday, green for Venus on Friday, black for Saturn on Saturday, and of course yellow or gold for the Sun on Sunday. Now, these colors which Humayun used correspond to those because the colors of the planet can change a bit according to different cultures. So he used those with a classic Persian poet Nizami associates with the planet in his tale of Tafbekar, and also Amir Khusro Pahlavi, the Indian poet, followed Nizami with his version of the Hamsa in using these particular colors. And in both versions of the tale of Bahram Gur, Bahram Gur the Shah visits his seven princesses, the seven princesses of his harem, on different days of the week in their respective pavilions, which have the planetary color of the day, and he also chooses his dress accordingly. So to create this status was a very exciting project, which I carried out with a Scottish sculptor, Jill Watson. Here we have Jill, and she's presenting me with a small model of the status in a sort of to remember our cooperation. So we have the small statue here in my study at Vienna. Yeah, and here an earlier stage of the stage, because first she would form the sculptures in wax. So this would be one of these wax models. Yeah, and altogether it was an exciting adventure to see, because I sent her portraits, painted portraits of Humayun, of contemporary paintings, And it was an exciting, process to see how Humayun from the two-dimensional in painting sort of emerged as a statue in the three-dimensional. So we also have the statues, of course, in the museum because they were especially created. In the back, a horoscope of an ancestor of Humayun, Iskandar Sultan, and here also the explanation of the different days and how they related to the color of Humayun, what he was always wearing. So, but Humayun did also something else. Yeah, he wait, I think I should mention this also. Yeah, no, this will come a little later, so we leave the way for the time being. He created a carpet, namely the so-called Bizarre de Nishad, or the carpet of mirth. This was a carpet made of valuable material, which represented a scientific cosmogram of the universe that followed the general geocentric scheme of Muslim astronomers back to Ptolemy. So we have here an example of this cosmic scheme in book painting, yeah, in our National Library at Vienna. So when I saw this, I felt, that Humayun's carpet follow would follow the scheme, also the way how Khandamir describes it. And anyway, I think you were able to read it. I don't have to read it out, what the different spheres meant. Of course, Humayun would sit in the center, in the circle of the sun, and his his court would be arranged in the different circle according to their planetary connection. But so this carpet can be connected to the idea to create such a carpet can be connected to several strands of literary and artistic traditions. We know that with his interest in astronomy and astrology, he was familiar with the Ptolemaic system. But the inspiration to use a cosmic carpet for the theater of his court clearly goes back to ancient Sasanian concepts, of which we know through the Theodosius Shahnameh, for instance, which was handed down, such concepts were handed down in classic Arabic and Persian literature. And with this literature, Humayun was, of course, very familiar as as a highly educated Timurid prince. So what he took from the account of these royal devices of the ancients was the idea of a large carpet with representations of the planets spread out on a platform. In Humayun's court theater, he is the main player. I mentioned it already, that he don't the color of the sun, and and each planet had to be the patron of the particular groups of his court for the other, which were represented by the other colors. So it testifies to Humayun's creativity and imagination that he looked back to the glorious mythical and historical Shahnameh kings, which were ever alive in the literature of Muslim courts, and it for the inspiration to represent himself as Sun King and as leader of the planets, namely his nobles, and to give the carpet the highly modern expression of a scientific diagram, the Ptolemaic depiction of the cosmos, the state of the art of the astronomical knowledge of his time. So in a way, symbolism, and science came together in this installation. Now, the association of the king with the sun is also deeply rooted in the Indian tradition, where in the Puranas, India's king are represented as having descended either from the sun or the moon, and most of the important dynasties of India likewise claim solar and lunar origin. Thus, Humayun derived his ideas of establishing a new social order from traditions both meaningful to Muslims and Hindus. He introduced also Indian practices like the Brahmanical ceremony of the weighing of the king, which is not represented in his own painting, in Humayun's painting, but later under the Akbar. You see here Akbar, the first image of the emperor being weighed against all sorts of goods which were given to poor people. So, which became an established custom for the Mughal emperor. And here you have a scientific, if you so wish, a geocentric armillary sphere. Yeah, still from the 17th century, still showing the geocentric system with the Earth in the center. And here's an very small only the heliocentric hypothesis of Tycho Brahe, which was created in the, which he thought about of in the 16th century. So what now, coming back to Humayun, who wanted to be meaningful, to establish a system which would create a new hierarchy without any links to usages familiar and his relatives, and thus and also to, so it should be without any links, yeah. It should be a new system, and thus he laid the foundation to what was to be a fundamental approach of the Mughal emperors, namely to address both communities of the realm, those grounded in revealed religions, namely the Muslims, and those centered on cosmic veneration, namely the Hindus. We can here speak here, I suggest, this term of simultaneous kingship, a deeply political strategy, as it affirmed the equal status of all his subjects. So, which was then also a very important agenda of his successor. So, but his original thinking led him to think of yet another, to add a new facet, and another new facet to his carpet, which has a definite Indian touch, namely the carpet of mirth was at times activated as a game board. So it was a court entertainment, and the courtiers, the players had to throw a die, and on the die would be indicated three positions, namely sitting and standing and lying down. And the courtiers had to follow this dictate of the dice, if you so wish, of the die. And so the image of the dignitaries of the court, frozen in different procedures, provoked obviously great mirth, at least for Humayun. Yeah. So the inspiration to create a dice game board clearly came from India, where dice game had a much greater importance as in Iran. The dice game goes back to Vedic times, and in the Gambler's Lament, one of the non-religious hymns of the Rig Veda, it consists of a monologue of a repentant gambler who bewails the ruin brought to him by his addiction to the dice. And of course, the most famous dice game ever present in Indian thought occurs in the Mahabharata between the Pandava and the Kaurava princes, where Yudhishthira, the oldest Pandava, gambles his wife Draupadi into servitude and shame, from which she is saved by Lord Krishna. So, since we live in a time where we like to connect phenomena of the past with the present, it's worth noting that Humayun's game has a modern equivalent in Twister, a game of physical skill where players had to place their hands and feet as indicated by a spinner on different colored circles on a mat. It fits well into the equalizing and balancing power of the carpet of mirth that it served as a board of a game without winners. And here we note again Humayun's disposition to subvert established conventions, because the principal idea of a game to achieve victory in a competition is absent. So, the Bacha created was a French philosopher, Michel Foucault, called a heterotopia, a cultural, institutional, or discursive space that is different, that is other, disturbing, contradictory, and transforming. Foucault's heterotopias are worlds within worlds, mirroring and yet upsetting that what is outside. The carpet of mirth did exactly that. In the circle of Humayun's game, the laws and customs of ordinary life no longer counted and were subject to the arbitrariness of the dice as imposed by the Bacha. It is as if he had been inspired what the Dutch historian Johan Huizinga described as the socially subversive power of the game. And this relates again to what Michael Bakhtin has called the carnivalesque. So this would be another, if you so wish, carnivalesque performance of Humayun, similar to staging a parody of himself by placing a water carrier on his throne as a reward for saving him from drowning during his lost battle against Sher Shah at Chausa. So, in a way, the carpet and its players symbolized the new order of Humayun, with which he broke out of the social order of his time. So, he was also a patron of painting. Yeah, we have seen this painting, and also sponsored architecture, and of course his famous inventions were mostly architectural besides the planetary court. So we have here his floating bazaar, his floating palace, his floating garden, and he also constructed a bridge over the rivers he had to cross. And yeah, he also built a new palace at Purana Kila, which you have here. Now we get stuck. Where do we get stuck? Hmm. So, right, thanks God it's moving again. We have a plan of Purana Kila, the Great West Gate. And here, I mentioned it already, the Sher Mandal, Humayun's library and observatory, which he built after he had returned uh, to Delhi. And look again, the throne. And it's the upper, the upper, you have probably all been to the Purana Kila. So the upper hall is not accessible to the public. And this is how it looked like when we surveyed it. And obviously, one wanted to look, our team wanted to look how it could have looked originally, and it was possible from traces in the decoration to work out a reconstruction which was done by the London-based architect Himanish Das. So you see what a grand interior it usually had, and to getting this full reproduction, we used contemporary architecture in Bohara. So these buildings, I suggested these buildings, like here's a Khanka of Hoja Zainuddin, which has a very similar wall, and also the kind of wall facing, the decoration of the wall. Traces of it could be discovered in the Schermandel, and this is how this grand recreation gives you an idea how the palace looked like originally. And of course, it's also represented as a model in the museum. And here you have the reconstruction of Himanish. Here once more. Yeah, these are the buildings which Humayun constructed the Delhi's Nila Gumbad, which was restored by the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, and very interesting the Sabz Burj, which was also restored by the Aga Khan. That's a photograph which I took in 1981, and on this basis, the Aga Khan did the entire reproduction of the original facing, because the archaeological survey had covered it with bathroom tiles, which did not correspond to the original. And what was discovered under a thick layer of later whitewashing and thought even was a wonderful vault, a painted vault, which was uncovered by the restorers of the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. I visited the site, and so here you see one of the restorers getting the later, facing with plaster and mortar off the walls, and so it was possible in the end of to uncover this great vault, which is painted in lapis lazuli and gold, so very precious colors and materials and pigments. So this is what made me think that it could only have been the tomb of Humayun's mother, which he built here in Delhi next to the Dargah of Nizamuddin. That's a reconstruction of the vault, which was done by a team member by Aishwarya Das. Yeah, and it's also interesting to see how characteristic these patterns are of contemporary Timurid book painting even. This happens very often. What happens in wall painting happens also in book illustration. So you have very similar sort of, medallions and interlacing patterns as we find them in the vault here. Yeah, that's another structure of Humayun, which was at Sanat near Benares, and so he raised a platform for viewing his troops here at the Chukandi Stupa at the base. He did this before it was excavated, and then a son of Raja Mansingh built a octagonal pavilion over it. And this pavilion has an inscription which tells us that he did it and that it was a platform of Humayun, and it was to remember Humayun. Yeah, then we have, I showed this structure already briefly. It was his swimming boat palace, which made such an impression on the later Mughals, or at least what they knew of the record of Khandamir about it, that where we have a number of boat palaces, quite fantastic boat palaces in Akbari painting, And so we tried to reconstruct the boat palace from the description of Khandamir. So a number of models were tried out. A problem was to how to get the correct shape of the boats, that one could fix this together. So in the end, it was Richard Barrault, the architect who works with me since 1982, who figured out a scheme how one could hang these four boats together. So, because Handamir tells us there were four pavilions, four arch pavilions put on boat and sort of fixed together with a frame and four arches. So this was the final solution, and it was realized in a small model, which now is also an object of the museum. So, what's the interesting aspect of this particular relevance of this idea, of the boat palace, of these four pavilions, uh, has on the creation of Humayun's tomb, you can make out here when you see an air view, we have the four pavilions, we have the arches that fix them together, but instead of the octagonal pool, which is created between them, we have the domed hall in the mausoleum. Here you have an aerial view, so you see the connection. And this has been suggested by an Indian art historian, Jairus Boy, who came first up with the idea that the boat palace could have served as a model for Humayun's tomb. And here we have the plan of Humayun's tomb with the four elements, which created, each element represents a ninefold plan, which was a favorite Timurid plan figure, which is put here together four times with a central hall in with a central hall, in the middle. So this illustrates how creatively this original idea of the boat palace was then realized in the complex geometry of the mausoleum. Now, Humayun's mausoleum did not appear out of the blue. It grew out of Humayun's thought, which was preserved in Khandamir's Kanone Humayuni. So it represents his interest in the mathematical sciences, his involvement with the occult and esoteric by the use of the number 8 in the geometry, and the fruit of his travels. You remember the domed mausoleum in Sultaniye. And it was realized after his death by an architect who received his formation in the orbit of the Bacha, because we know that architects from Buhara worked for Humayun. So it evoked for posterity the Bacha himself, who is buried in it. And the connection is even stronger because it cannot be doubted that he was also the conceptualist behind the building. It is a posthumous realization of his ideas and dreams. So, and now in the remaining time, I just take you through the museum. So we have three main galleries. This was the first draft of the galleries, but in the end, this is what it became. So first we have the ramp, which takes you down. Then we have a forehall with a video, and here are some already models of the surrounding area of the restored monuments of Sundar nurseries. Then we have here the Emperor's Gallery, which is dedicated to Humayun, where the emperor sleeps. And here a recreation of a Mughal garden. And here's this gallery here is devoted to Nizamuddin and Nizamuddin Aulia and the personages which are connected with what one can really name the first Delhi of the Mughals, 16th century Delhi. So, yeah, here another view on the gallery block here, and Sundar Nursery Park, the accessory buildings, and the tomb and the complex. One goes down this ramp, and here is the great entrance hall. And here's the first forehall where we have an overview of the whole area, which was 16th century Delhi with important restored Mughal monuments. And here you see another recreation of the imagine recreated water palace, which is also fitted into this panorama. So then we have here Humayun's galleries, where the emperor sleeps. And very important are, for instance, also the models. So the model of Humayun's tomb here, and here the models of the finials, and a cut through the museum, which gives you an idea, you know, what is beyond and outside of the main hall. Here another view of it. Yeah, this was a centerpiece of the whole galleries, namely an outstanding object which is 6 meters high. And this is the reason why the galleries were constructed so high, to be able to fit this finial into it, which once crowned the dome of Humayun's mausoleum, but it fell down, you know, and was then restored. And so this is the original, and a copy of it was then put on Humayun's tomb. It was so the damages were very high. It's made of 300 kilos of copper covered with gold. So it's, as I mentioned, one of the stars artifacts of the museum. And there's a models here, like that's a part of the drum on which the dome of Humayun sits. So of Humayun's tomb sits. So it's I think I mentioned it gives you an idea of elements of the tomb which are not generally accessible to the visitor. So, yeah, we also have Mughal tiles, which were found in the area of Delhi by Dr. Yunus Jaffrey, who was my Persian teacher, and he was very concerned to serve whatever remained of the Mughals at Delhi. So I was very glad that in the museum, these tiles which he found and saved, they were used as borders of a flower bed, could get their proper place. And yeah, we have here the garden, which is in this area recreation of a Mughal garden, open to the sky. A model of Nizamuddin, yeah, which is another sort of highlight of the galleries. So we obviously these are the buildings created around the Dargah, the great saint of Delhi. So 8 Mughal emperors are buried here. It has even been referred to as a dormitory of the Mughals. And the deep connections that the Mughals had with the sacred Sufi landscape of Nizamuddin is in the museum shown with paintings, films, and architectural exhibits. So, yeah, one of the persons who wanted to be buried near the saint is Emperor Shah Jahan, Shah Jahan's daughter, Jahanara. That's her gravestone, which is inscribed with sayings of her that she was a poor fakir and wanted nothing but grass over her tomb. But still, this beautiful tombstone was created at Agra by an artist of Agra, whom you see on the right side. And this is how the original looks still today. And in the museum, by recreating it, we used flowers of the Taj Mahal to give us an idea of the colors of the inlay, which was then completed by this artist very beautifully. So what else do we have? Yeah, that's a very important, um, actually one of my favorite exhibits, because it's a recreation, a replica of the canopy which Farid Khan Buhari donated in 1608 to the Dargah of Nizamuddin. And it was made in Gujarat, and the particular art in which Gujarat excels is mother of pearl inlay. So the original in the Dargah was recreated in this replica, and many workers, worked on it. I can show you one of them here, or two of them rather. And the wonderful thing was they were able to recreate the liveliness and the dynamism of the originally. So in a way, it has become an artwork. The replica has become an artwork of its own. Yeah, altogether we have now over 500 objects displayed here, original objects and recreations, copies, videos, architectural models are brought to a very harmonious synthesis. Yeah, we have also stone inscriptions, and yeah, the tiles I also mentioned, textiles also. Lately, several museums have been created in the Near East and Asia. Now I show you still this. Yeah, so right. So that's the whole team. Yeah. Uh, and what I wanted to say, so lately several museums have been created in the in the Near East and Asia, and so especially those at Doha and Abu Dhabi stand out for their grand architecture. Doha here has been designed by the international and renowned architect I.M. Pei, but these grand structures are filled, in my view, with a rather haphazard collection of items. Now, contrary to this, the Museum of Humayun's tomb has been created by Indians. I am the only foreign advisor to it. And also, it tells a coherent story. It tells that of the history of one of the most important sites of Delhi, the first Delhi of the Mughals, and the history and the life of one of the most outstanding rulers of India. In his non-conformity, he's perhaps the most modern of all Mughal emperors. For William Dalrymple, yeah, it also has become a living museum. You see, and the visitors started to tie threads for wishes around the Charlie screens, which shows a replica of the baldachin over the tomb of Nizamuddin. So, yeah, in the end, I wanted to quote William Dalrymple. Uh, the best displayed and best museum in Delhi, it's perhaps the best museum in the entire country. To be completely honest, I was actually moved to tears by the extraordinary brilliance of this museum and the sophistication and nuance of its curation. It is the great museum celebrating the richness of Delhi's art, architecture, and civilization, which this city so deserves and which I never thought I would see in my lifetime. End of quote and end of talk. Do you also have any questions?
Yes, ma'am, just a second. So thank you very much, ma'am, for such a wonderful presentation. And if you allow that,
Switch off the better
we
not.
can have we can have few questions.
Okay.
Okay, so request the floor is open for questions. Kindly raise your hand, and I'll ask you to unmute. Go for unmute, and then please be brief and go ahead with your question.
So I should go on mute?
No, ma'am. I'll
Okay.
ask the participant to unmute, and they'll speak up, and you can answer the question.
Okay.
You can raise your hands.
So it was quite a bit. You have to think about it. Anyway, has anyone been to the museum? Not yet.
If you have any questions, if you're facing any network issues, please drop down in the chat box. I'll get back to those questions. All right. So thank you very much, ma'am. I have one question. So
Okay.
since you talked about the museum, so but I really found that we have so many museums in India, like the entire National Museum, a big one in Delhi itself, and other museums as well. Like there was a small museum in the Purana Kila as well. So what was the need to have a separate museum that is also based on Humayun, who is not a well-known Mughal emperor?
Yeah, right. This was the agenda of the museum to make him better known to the public because he is such a fascinating personality, and uh, and also to explain, if you so wish, the architecture of his mausoleum by bringing models, replicas of individual elements of the architecture closer to the visitor, and also to make the visitor of Humayun's tomb to understand the importance of the general area, also of Nizamuddin, and also of the historical importance of the monuments in the landscape park. So the museum is set right into this whole historical landscape, and I think I mentioned at the beginning, should serve as a gateway, as an introduction from where one could, access these sites directly. So I think that's quite a unique concept in India regarding museums. As I also said, it tells a coherent story. It's not just one object here, one object there, or let's say put a number of sculptures into one gallery of one period, but to the narrative. I think it's an important aspect of the museum is really the narrative. Okay.
So my another question is that it's fine that you people have used you people have showed very well the Humayun's reign and all things, but what is more interesting is to show the Nizamuddin Aulia's Dargah. So what
Yeah.
could be the motive behind that?
Yeah, because I mean, the reason why Humayun's tomb was constructed was the Dargah, because people wanted to be buried near the great saint of Delhi to profit from his barakat, from his spiritual charisma. So obviously it goes back to the Middle Ages, and the Mughals understood very well the importance of Sufi sheikh, for the whole system of the whole social system, of their territories. So the association with the sheikh uh, had also a political sort of understanding. I mean, Simon Digby has written an important article on the Sultan and the Sufi Sheikh, that this connection was not always smooth, and obviously the Mughal emperors also associated with different Sufi orders, but the Chishti saints, of which Nizamuddin was a representative, in the end, was her most important connection. Yeah, obviously, Humayun also had a close association with Shatari Sufis, who which was very much criticized by Mirza Haider also, because they were interested in occultism, astronomy, and so Humayun could have had his inspiration also from their side.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Now I'm coming back to the audience. So we have Harry. Please, I'm asking you to unmute. Please go ahead with your question.
Madam, it's a pleasure to hear you and see you. Of course, I can't see you in person, but I have a question about the tomb itself. Since
Yeah.
you are such a master of the tombs, especially Humayun tomb, the question is, the four chambers around the main dome, do they still represent the boats, or they had different function completely at that time? What function was it?
No, I think, in these four chambers, a typical plan, of Timurid mausolea and tomb pavilion is used, which is called Hasht Behisht, the eight paradises. Meaning the eight elements are arranged around the central one, the dome, which had always a particular meaning, symbolizing heaven. So by using four characteristic plans of tomb four times to create an overall structure, if we look back, no, I can't go back. Okay, but because the overall structure again represents a central dome and four chambers around it. So the constituent element is also contained in the whole. It's a very interesting connection, which we also have in Indian temple architecture. So it was meant to create, if you so wish, a super tomb. By using these four individual tomb plans four times to create, to make it so to say one over. So does this answer your question?
All right, thank you, ma'am. Next we have is Ashok Bakshi.
No?
No, good evening, Dr. Ebba Koch.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice, very elaborate explanation and description you gave about that monument and the surrounding area. It's marvelous.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to view some of your paintings in Schönbrunn Schloss in Vienna.
Yeah, I saw one, yeah. So, you
And
want to you want
I
to
was,
know more about it?
I was told that during Second World War, they were taken down in the cellar, in the basement, to hide it from the Hitler, so that they're not stolen.
Yeah, it's true. This is what happened with many artworks in Vienna. First, to save them from perishing from the bombardments,
Yes,
and also because, like many sort of rulers and warlords, Hitler took took all out of Austria precious artworks, paintings and sculptures and everything. So so some of them were saved at Hallstatt in caves, and so in the end we were able we were able to save most of them, so not much got perished. But the paintings at Vienna are very interesting because they form part of an overall decorative scheme of one room in the palace. I don't know whether you have been to Vienna and seen this room. It's called the Millionenzimmer, which means the chamber of the millions. Probably so it has been explained to indicate how precious the decoration is. And here we have Indian paintings pasted on wooden boards and set into rocaille frames to decorate the whole room. Yeah. So
Yes, very good.
we have Humayun also at Vienna then. Okay.
Yes, yes. And other question is the dome.
Yeah.
About the dome, from where he got the inspiration in some other place or other country, or the double dome which was built first
Yeah.
time here.
No, we have already a double dome in the tomb of Sikandar Lodi in Lodi Gardens. It's also a double dome as far as I know. But obviously it was a common feature in Timurid monuments. The Grand Tomb of Timur at Samarkand has a double dome. But in this dome, they have a high drum, and so the construction is rather weak. So inside there are strengthens with wooden beams, if you so wish. But Humayun's dome of the dome of Humayun's tomb, they used such a good, plaster or concrete, so it holds on its own by the way it's constructed. By the way it's constructed. So inside also, when you look at the model, you see that the dome inside is empty. There are no supportive constructions like in earlier monuments, let's say at Samarkand or also Bukhara or also in Iran. I'm not quite sure about the dome of the Great Mausoleum in Sultaniye, which I showed whether it's a double. No, it's not a double dome. I think it's a single dome. Yeah. So it was very well constructed, and the inspiration was there in dome mausolea all over Asia, I would say.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next, we'll have two more questions. Anita, please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot for an enlightening lecture. It was beautiful. And I had been to the museum. I took my foreign tourists also there. They were
Okay,
highly appreciated.
yeah.
But I was missing something, that is, when we go to the palaces, like you told us about Sher Mandal. And in Purana Kila, we just have the mosque and Sher Mandal. We don't get any idea about how the Emperor Humayun lived, what kind of palaces he had. The boat palace gives an idea, the carpet gives us an idea of his grandeur. But
Yeah.
what was the particular style that we miss?
Yeah, you have to read my book to get the full information.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, it's there in the book.
Yes, yes, I have.
Okay, okay, so I have to buy
I
it.
have, we have, yeah, and I try to draw the information together which we get from Akbar's time, but
Yes, yes.
these were eyewitnesses like Gulbaram Begum. She was Humayun's sister, so she gives us very lively, accounts of the festivities of the wedding of Mirza Hindal and other events. So I try to draw this together in the book to give an idea also of the court life. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks a lot. I'll surely buy the book, ma'am. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. I don't know. They should have a bookstore already, but it's in the making. It's in the making. Yeah, yeah. I'm afraid it's a bit expensive, but perhaps they have they have just a viewing copy which one can consult. I will suggest it to the Aga Khan people to have a copy of the book so people can sort of live through it. Yeah.
It's quite extensive. I saw on the Amazon. Anyways, thank you very much, ma'am, for your time. That's all from our end. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed talking to you and also to interact with you in the Q&A question. Yeah. All right. Bye-bye, Sam.